Hi guys, this is Dr. Sosnowski from MVP Medical Care. I am so excited that you guys are here with us today to learn a little bit more about autism, because I know you parents, you teachers that have dealt with autism forever, and or at least since your kids were born, have learned an awful lot. But many of you are going to a regular MD and they really have no understanding about all that's going on underneath the guise of autism, underneath the diagnosis of autism, because there's way more out there that we can do to help our kids than they're actually getting help with. And so I'm Dr. Jennifer Sosnowski. I'm a board certified family physician. I'm board certified in integrative medicine, and I'm also certified in functional medicine. And it's that functional medicine side that makes all the difference in the world for caring for folks with autism and caring for folks with many other chronic conditions. Generally, for those of you that don't know what functional medicine is, use your little chat box out there and just tell me, yes, I know what functional medicine is, or no, I don't know what functional medicine is. Because I'd like to know how many people out there actually know what it is, because it's really important to be able to. Vanessa says no. The rest of you guys know, don't know. All right. Now, there's a reason that I'm here. I'm doing these webinars because most people have no idea what functional medicine is. And if you don't know that there's an alternative to the regular medical system, you have no idea what to even look for, or that we even exist. So I got into functional medicine back in 2009. I'd had 6 years of daily migraines that regular medicine couldn't treat, and all they could do was throw drugs at me, which is what they're doing for you guys with your kids with autism. When they're not behaving well or you're not sleeping, they throw meds at you. And really, that is not the answer. And just like it was not the answer for me when I went through my 6 years of daily migraines. So functional medicine is all about getting to the root cause of disease and using the research that's done in the lab. And instead of waiting 20 years for the pharmaceutical companies to make a drug based on that research, we're using vitamins, minerals, enzymes to get the baddie back in balance. So, and get you truly feeling good so that we can get the best out of ourselves, out of our bodies, out of our brains, out of our general function. We all have the right to have a good quality life, to be able to express ourselves to others, to talk to others, and to be able to interact with others in a way that we all understand one another. And with our kids with autism, this is just not happening. And there's a lot of things going on underneath autism that we really need to address to get things better. So from a functional medicine side, we know autism, most kids with autism have a really dysfunctional gut. Their gut is very inflamed. They're sensitive to a lot of foods they eat. Many of them are, most of them, as a matter of fact, are addicted to gluten and dairy if they're eating these foods. And that gluten and dairy causes a lot of inflammation of the wall of the gut and and gets them sensitive to other foods. So they don't want to eat any other foods than the gluten and dairy. Unfortunately, the gluten and the dairy gives them literally a chemical high. What the antibody to gluten is called gluteomorph, one of the antibodies. One of the antibodies to dairy is called caseomorph. That morph is morphine. They're literally getting a chemical high off of this food. And it really disrupts their behavior. It is an addiction to that food because every time they eat this food, they get a high, they feel better, and so they go for more of this food. They don't technically feel that high, but their body feels that high and craves more of it until that's all that they want to eat many of the times. And we know a lot of our kiddos with autism are eating a lot of macaroni and cheese, chicken nuggets, a lot, and the Cheez-Its. They're eating a lot of things that are just gluten and dairy. And there's a reason for this, because most of them make this antibody to gluten or dairy or both, so that these are the things they want to eat. And in doing so, by inflaming their gut, then they don't want to eat the other foods that are actually good for them because their stomach hurts. They don't care if it hurts if they're eating gluten and dairy because it's causing a high. And yet all that inflammation of the gut and the abnormal bacteria in the gut from the exposures to our world nowadays really causes a lot of inflammation in the brain, because the more the gut's inflamed, the more the brain gets inflamed and the body as a whole gets inflamed. And they're really feeling miserable, and we don't even know it because they can't tell us all the time. Or if they do tell us, it's just screaming, being irritable, and not being consolable, and we don't really know what the true problem is. We also know for many of our kids with autism is that they have what we call a methylation disorder. 60% of the American population has a disorder in the ability to methylate folic acid. That's adding a little methyl group onto it, which is a carbon and 3 hydrogens. By methylating that folic acid, it becomes useful for us. And folic acid is particularly important in the brain. And most of our autistic kiddos have some level of methylation difficulty. So they're not methylating their folic acid well enough in their brain, and therefore their brain is not functioning at its highest potential. And this is particularly important when we see families where there's a lot of depression. Methylated folic acid is needed to make serotonin, which is our antidepressant hormone. So when there's a whole family with some underlying depression issues, there's probably a big methylation disorder. And then we can almost guarantee that our autistic kiddo has this too, because that's one of the hallmarks that we see quite commonly. And then their brain doesn't learn and retain things as well without this folic acid in there. We also know that many of these kiddos have an immune deficiency. The very problem that gave them the autism, the very insult that gave them the autism, causes an immune deficiency because that's a brain immune function is genetically coming from the brain and then has to work in the rest of the body. It's also immune function is also located in the gut. Some of the two most abnormal places in the autism body. So when the immune system's not working as well, our kids get a lot of other chronic issues with this. I started my world in functional medicine with chronic illness in adults because that was me with my 6 years of daily migraines. And as I got into working more with autistic kids, I realized 100% that most of these autistic kids are just as sick, even in their best cases, as most of my chronically ill adults who've been ill for 20 and 30 years. This is a crime because when you go to your regular doctor, all these symptoms are just lumped in as autism, but it's not just autism. There's stuff that you can do to help with all of this. For instance, in my practice, with our MERT therapy that I'm going to talk about in a moment, what we see is that only about 30% of our kids that come in with autism have just autism, where I literally, on doing history and talking to the family and talking to the kiddos, I can't see that there's more going on. They're generally well behaved. They may not they don't have a lot of irritability. They may have some sleeping issues, but they're not a handful. They're just kind of distractible and doing more things on their own. With what we see in our office, we see 30% of the kids that come in with autism have an autoimmune disease of the brain called PANDAS. It's an inflammatory disease of the brain that can cause a panoply of symptoms, and little varying degrees of all of these different symptoms seem to be a big issue, with severe irritability and anger, where it's 1 second they're fine, the next second they're off the wall and so angry they can't even hear you when they're talking. Severe depression, severe OCD, suicidality, and a lot of brain fog along with this, and insomnia issues along with this. So if your kiddo, somebody was up there a little bit ago and talking about how her daughter was completely out of control and angry, and she probably has PANDAS. One of the things I found for a diagnostic tool just for myself is that the medication that works best to control the PANDAS doesn't fix it by any stretch of the imagination, but to control the symptoms of PANDAS is Resperdal. So I know if I have a kid that's come in because of behavioral issues, doing a little bit better on a medication, if they're on Resperdal, I know that they have PANDAS or PANS. And this autoimmune disease of the brain is because their immune system isn't working as well. but it's 100% treatable, so that as we get through treatment, the anger goes away, the depression goes away, the irritability, the insomnia goes away. For all of them, the suicidality, if there's any of that, goes away. The whole child gets better. The brain fog gets better. The ability to function in school gets better. So what we call autism many times isn't just autism. And on the same vein, one of the other things that we see very commonly is chronic mold toxicity, chronic Lyme disease. And these chronic infections are really dampening the energy of our kids, dampening their ability to function well, because there's a lot of brain fog associated with that. And they're not being able to even begin to reach their best capacity. For those of you that have never heard of the telepathy tapes, you're going to want to get on and start looking at some of these telepathy tapes. They're podcasts by a woman by the name of Kai, K-Y. And they're really showing the special skills of a lot of our kids with autism. It seems to be that the more severe the autism, the less able they are to communicate with us, the more they have these really special skills in terms of telepathy, in terms of seeing the future, seeing things that happened in the past, being able to take their soul to a place where they can talk with each other. It is most of you have probably been taught that your kid is handicapped, they'll never reach their full potential, they're not intelligent. That is, nothing could be further from the truth. Most of these kiddos are brilliant, but because their brain is not connecting to their body very well, their brain can ask their body to do something, but the body doesn't do it. And then we think they're stupid. We think they're not learning, but many of these kids know everything that they've ever seen or come across or read in the past, and they just can't tell us. So we need to give these kids the tools to connect their brain to the body better, as well as to get their body healthier so they can reach their full potential. And the telepathy tapes, if you look at those, they talk a lot about spell to communicate. Spell to communicate is an ability to use a letter board that has spaces in it, and the kids actually poke the letter to say the word that they want. They literally spell the word. The kids have no problem with this. When you give them an ability to do something, they've already learned how to read. They already know how to spell words. They don't even need help with that kind of thing. They need help actually getting their words out. And the spelling board on Spell to Communicate has seemed to be a godsend for so many kids, enable them to actually communicate with their family, with their caregivers, with other people around them, to actually get their true self out there. So we're going to share a little bit about that today, and we're going to share about I'm going to share about a therapy called MERT therapy, which enables the kids to connect their brain to their body better, so that they can be closer to reaching their full potential. But we've got to look on all sides of it. We can't just work with the brain in terms of the brain-body connection and expect everybody to be great, when many of these kids have chronic illness going on at the same time, and they cannot function and pay attention to just what they want to do brain-wise when they're actually chronically ill. So we need to address this chronic illness as well to really get our kiddos to their best self. Are you guys understanding some of this? Katie, you said you're a little skeptical about this. Well, it's happened in a number of my clients in my practice. I know it exists. I've seen it. I've seen what the kids were before MERT therapy. I've seen what they've done after MERT therapy, and I've seen all of the stories on what's been going on with their families after this. So 100% telepathy is real, whether it's how we understand it or whether there's a spiritual knowledge base out there that they can connect to that we can't because we've never learned to, we were never forced to, doesn't matter. What matters is that they have the ability to communicate with others because they can't communicate the regular way. For safety, they need to know what other people feel about them when they can't read facial expressions and they can't talk. So this is the way that they've been able to communicate, that they can read people's minds and know what those people are thinking about them. That's really important for their understanding of the world when they don't understand it the way you and I understand it. So let's go ahead and start the slideshow now, and let's talk about what else we can do for our autistic kiddos, because there's so much out there that you guys have never heard about. So Corinne has a 14-year-old kiddo with autism. She was 14-year-old. She's now just turned 18 years old in November this year. She was worst of the worst autistic kiddos. She never slept through the night. She had never said any words. She was completely nonverbal. She was screaming all the time. She was irritable. If you left her alone for a second, she'd run out the door and run down the street. Her mom was miserable because at this point in time, dad had left some time ago. He couldn't tolerate it. Mom is almost suicidal, wondering how she's going to live through teenagerhood with this 14-year-old who was completely off the wall. And I'd been working with her for a couple of years. And when we got the MERT therapy for brain treatment, I asked her to come in right away. I said, hey, you need to be my first autistic kiddo in here because mom's not going to make it. We need to get both of your lives better. And within 3 days, her daughter slept for 8 hours for the first time in her night, all night long. Mom was up all night because she was waiting for her daughter to get up, but her daughter started sleeping through the night. And she's done that pretty much ever since. Then her mood started increasing, her stimming decreased, she started making more eye contact, she began talking more and more. Teachers at school, at her autism school, were asking what she was doing. She was doing so much better. Fast forward through her treatment with a MERT therapy, 2 months after that, she was able to say Happy Mother's Day to her mother for the first time in her entire life. You can imagine how amazing that was for her mom to hear this. And then she started learning spell to communicate. And as she started getting better with spell to communicate, she was letting her mom know about her deepest innermost thoughts. Her mom realized that she was telepathic, that she'd been reading her mom's thoughts forever, and to understand what her mom was upset about, understand what her mom was happy about, understand what her mom thought about her at any points in time. But she also was able to say, hey, Mom, I know all this information. She could literally answer any test if the person in front of her knew the answers. And she decided that she wanted to become a neuroscientist. So while she had never progressed anywhere in her autism school because she couldn't let people know what she was doing, as soon as she got spell to communicate, she is now getting her GED online in the path to becoming a neuroscientist to help all other kids with autism. This is brilliant. And her story is not alone. We've had several other clients at our practice with severe autism that now with that MERT therapy and connecting their brain to the body are now able to tell people their innermost thoughts, tell them their desires, tell them what's been going on in their world for all these years. You can imagine how that feels as she gets better. Claudia, I don't know where you've had MERT therapy in the past, but if you haven't had some big improvements, there may be chronic illness going on underneath, but you may had other stuff that was in the way of getting those great improvements that we really want to along the way. So this is our team. Myself, Elizabeth, our neurotech, Gizmo, our therapy dog, Dawn, our health coach and nutritionist, Hunter at the front desk, who's moderating with us today. It takes a whole team for us to get our folks healthy. And so thank you guys for being here today and learning more about this and then sharing this, because this therapy is life-changing. And you know what? Most people have never heard of it. And you've never heard of it, even though it's been around about 11 years now. You've never heard of it because insurance doesn't cover it yet for autism. And so the regular medical doctors don't know anything about it because they haven't had it pushed on them by the insurance industry. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. It worked phenomenally well, but because it's not covered and something your primary care doctor or your neurologist knows about, you don't hear about it. So that's why I'm here, because it has made such amazing, life-changing events for so many kiddos. So for many of you, you may have that irritable, angry kiddo. You may have that kind of distracted, in his own world kind of kiddo. And that's not what we want of our kiddos. We want them to be out there taking advantage of the world. We want them to be traveling. We want to show them the world and the different places. We want our children to be interacting with others and to be able to hopefully get married at some time and have a family of their own. And right now, for many of us, our kids aren't anywhere near that. And we don't even know what they're thinking, which is the hardest. We have to kind of read between the lines in their actions, and that's not what they deserve. They deserve better than this. So that MERT therapy, it stands for magnetic e-resonance therapy. And we are Arizona's only provider of functional MERT. And what we're going to talk about is how that therapy enhances the brain's performance. It targets conditions resistant to drug-based therapy, because autism isn't, hey, you take this drug and your kiddo gets better. We don't have that yet. But it also offers new hope for those suffering from many other cognitive issues besides autism along the way. Mary will talk a little bit about availability across the country in a little bit. It is not everywhere yet. There are many states that have no MERT therapies, and that's why I'm talking to you from Phoenix, because Phoenix is a great place to come during the summer when everybody's out of school. It's hot as hell here in Phoenix, but that means nobody else wants to stay, which means a VRBO or an Airbnb is a dime a dozen, and it's super cheap. Good place to get out of home. You got a pool with a lot of the houses, and then you've got a great vacation at the same time as you do some MERT therapy. So what we're going to talk about throughout this webinar is what the MERT process is, why it gives better outcomes than other therapy, and then how it combines an EEG, which is an EKG is to the heart as an QEEG is to the brain. So we're looking at brain waves and using that TMS therapy to tailor therapy to each individual's unique brain waves. And that's what makes MERT so special, is that it's tailored to each individual client. We're going to show some research supporting the MERT therapy, and then success stories from clients with autism treated with us. So stay with us to the end to learn how to receive a free 15-minute discovery call. So if for some reason we do not answer your questions on the chat today, because I'm going to be going back and forth and kind of looking at some while I'm talking, but if we don't answer your question, the easy answer is schedule that free 15-minute discovery call that we offer at the end, and we'll be able to answer those questions for you. I'm not trying to intentionally skip anything. If you have more questions, we'll be happy to answer them on that call. But we're going to give you the link to make that discovery call a little further toward the end here. I want to at least get through some basic history. So MERT is neuromodulation. So neuromodulation is a technology that acts upon nerves to change their function, either through an electrical or pharmaceutical agent. In the case of MERT therapy, it's electrical stimulation to the head via a magnet, and it improves the performance of groups of neurons in the brain so that it helps the brain process at the same speed and coherently, meaning from the back of the brain all the way to the front of the brain, so that we can actually act on it. And the problem with a lot of our autism brains is that those brain waves that start in the back oftentimes never make it to the front. So it's very hard for them to function normally when their pathways don't make it to the front to actually act on it the way the rest of us do. Sometimes that's very good. If we have an autistic kiddo that is able to communicate, then they can solve problems that nobody else can because they view the whole world differently. Think of Temple Grandin and all that she was able to do. And this is brilliant. Our world needs these people. On the other hand, we need them to be able to communicate, to spread their knowledge, to share with us how they view the world differently than the rest of us. So any kind of trauma to the body, head trauma, perinatal or birth trauma, any kind of infection or toxicity or chemotherapy, severe emotional events, all of these impair the brain. Timothy, we're going to help talk in a few minutes about things on the head. Stay with me there. All these things affect the brain. The brain has only two ways to respond. It can slow down some of the nerve pathways, or it can speed up some of the nerve pathways. And when some of the nerves are working at different speeds than the rest of the nerves in the brain, we get symptoms. Brain fog, anxiety, emotionality, insomnia, impaired speech. You guys can tell me all of these. So we really need to address these brain pathways that are going the wrong speed to get better function, not only in autistic kids, but in all of us. And for many of you parents with an autistic kiddo, many of you, that is particularly those that have really severely dysfunctional kiddos, many of you have some PTSD just from trying to get through day to day in dealing with your child and not knowing what they're going to do next. They're constantly being on watch. that they don't run out the door or hurt themselves or something. It's really important that that some of you get some of this help as well. So Deventria was the mom of a 5-year-old son with autism, and she had done so much therapy. He was her third child. She had 2 older children, and then by the time we saw her, she had a younger child as well. And she had done so many therapies: PT, OT, chiropractic, biomedical treatment, everything. Before he was even 5 years old, she jumped in right away from the very beginning. She'd just been trying to get him to the next level. Now, he was moderately severe on the autism scale, but what she found is that MERT therapy for her was absolutely the answer. Within a very short time, he had improved verbal communication. He was sleeping through the night. He was helping with dressing. He was eating with utensils. He was playing with his siblings. It really changed their world. Fast forward 18 months, he's come back, and he's now not even on the autism scale, not even included as autism anymore on the autism scale. His CAR score over the course of the 8 weeks of MERT therapy that I did with it, his CAR score went down to not even being included as autism. And 18 months later, when he came back, he's in a normal classroom. He's keeping up with all the normal kiddos. He's doing all the normal things. His mom still knows he's got a little bit of autism. He's not 100% normal, but he's functioning in the normal world, and this is amazing. And this is what we'd like for all of our families out there. Not everyone's kiddo goes from moderate to nothing or from severe to highly functional, but in a different way. Now, Corinne's daughter still has a lot of autism issues, but being able to talk using that spell to communicate has solved so many issues for the family. Deventria's kiddo, over the course of 4 weeks, dropped about 10 points on the autism score, dropped even further over the next 4 weeks, improved verbal response, increased sociability with siblings, helping with dressing, putting on shoes independently, sleeping through the night, and for the first time saying, "Hi, I love you, want more." Awesome. Awesome. What we'd all like for our kiddos. And then Miriam had similar results with her 5-year-old. She was on the TV show, The Doctors, and her daughter again responded very quickly within 2 or 3 days, and was able to say have the first week of solid sleep, the first conversations, the first time she recognized that Miriam was her mom. You can imagine how this changes your whole family. There's some conversation being able to happen now. And so we understand a little bit more about our kids' wants and needs and can meet them a little bit better. So what are the steps involved? Well, first, it's meeting Elizabeth. She's your neurotech. The first step is getting an EEG. The EEG, again, is to look at the brain waves, where the brain is functioning well and where it needs some improvement. Now, as you know, as one of our gentlemen was saying already, putting a hat on the head of an autistic kiddo, not always the easiest thing to do. So what we suggest, because this EEG is the very first step to getting the therapy, is we suggest you go out to Amazon and get a kid's bathing cap. Hunter can put up the link for that here in just a moment. And that kid's bathing cap, you're going to want to put on while they're playing a game, while they are watching their videos, while they're doing something that they really enjoy. And once they'll let it sit on for about 10 minutes, you're good. You can come in here. You can make an appointment with us. If you come in and your kiddo is very sensitive to things on their head, then you're going to not do well the first time out. And it's going to be really hard to get your kiddo back in the door again for an successful EEG. So don't set yourself up for failure. If you're interested, talk to us. Let's talk about where you're at, what we need to do. And then we can follow up with you in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on how you're doing, and then get you in here when you're ready. But please, you've got to get, if your kiddo doesn't like things on their head, you've got to get a kid's bathing cap and try it out. Ideally something that has some texture in it, because our cap actually has some texture to it as well. So once you can wear it for 10 minutes, you're good. You can come in and get that EEG. And the next step is to get our report back. The NeuroRef is the report that we get. It's got two parts to it. It's got a little graph on the top that goes through posterior, middle, front of the brain. And then down below, it has what we call a relative power map or a color map. And it's telling us how the brain is working side to side. This is what's used to create a personalized treatment protocol, adjusting the frequency, the location, and the type of wave to each individual brain to utilize that magnetic energy. Absolutely amazing. And what we find is that by tuning these brain waves, it's kind of like tuning a guitar. When our guitar strings are out of tune, we can play it, but it sounds like noise. We get all kinds of weird symptoms out of it. But when we get those guitar strings all in tune, we make a beautiful song. The same is true of our brain. When our brain waves are out of tune, we get noise, we get irritability, we get mood issues, and symptoms. When our brain waves are all in tune, we get the best function out of our brain. We can do the best in our world and get the best of ourselves. And that's what we want for all of our kiddos, of course. The last step is the therapy itself. The MERT therapy is 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, for about 15 minutes a day. So 15 minutes is pretty short. It's about the time we've found most of our kiddos can sit still for about 20 minutes max, and they don't even have to sit entirely still, but they start getting really restless at about 20 minutes. So the 15-minute therapy is absolutely perfect. It's a lot of you will spend more time getting to us and getting home than you will do in the therapy itself. It's still doing an amazing job. We typically do the MERT in 2-week blocks because an EEG is repeated every 2 weeks, so we can assess how treatment is going. So what we'll be doing is when you come in for therapy every day, my tech is going to be asking, how was yesterday? How did you do? How did your kiddo do? Are they more irritable? Are they sleeping okay? Are they got a little bit more jumpy than they used to be? If we're seeing any symptoms that are getting worse over a couple of days, then we back down a little bit on therapy until those symptoms go away, and then keep moving forward a little bit more slowly. The treatment is completely painless, and typically, particularly our kids with autism, everybody is looking forward to coming in. Within 2 or 3 days, they are running down the hall and sitting in that chair. Many of them are actually holding that little wand to their head. It feels so good. They feel the energy from it. They feel how their brain is working better, and they want it. Many of our kids have tantrums on the weekend when they don't go to MERT because they want to be there. They want to feel that energy and get that improvement along the way. And that certainly makes our parents feel a heck of a lot better along the way, that they're making this effort to actually get their kiddos' brain working better and better because it feels so much better to them. So this is what a typical QEEG report looks like, one little wave here. And it's telling a lot about how the brain works, particularly in the autism realm that we're looking at today. So we're looking at 4 different types of waves. The deltas are deep sleep waves. Nobody's allowed in deep sleep. But we do have some waves that we typically see here. And at about 2 hertz, which is right in the middle of this wave here, we get to see oftentimes what's called an encephalitis wave. Autism technically is encephalitis of the brain. And so many of our kiddos have a little encephalitis wave at 2 hertz. Nobody ever told you that, but that's really what autism is, and is inflammation of the brain. So the theta waves are the light sleep waves. They're from about 4 hertz to 8 hertz. And that's the waves that we see when we're going into light sleep. But we also see it a lot in autism. Our kiddos with autism, their whole brain is slowed down from the inflammation that's gone on. And so they tend to have a lot of theta. And that theta can cause a lot of anxiety and brain fog. But we also see it with prior head injuries, with PTSD, with sleep apnea, with many other things. The alpha wave is really where we're spending most of our time and energy in our MERT therapy, because this is what a nice alpha wave is supposed to look like in an adult. And for our autistic kiddos, it doesn't look anything like this. And we're going to show a couple of autistic EEGs in just a moment. The beta waves are the super fast brain. And a little peak like this we call a motivation and drive peak. It's about 30% of the population that's motivated and driven for success. You kind of know who they are ahead of time. But if you have this motivation and drive peak, we know you're one of those. Don't have to be one of those. You don't have to have this peak to be one of those driven people. But when there's a lot of beta waves in there, it can cause a lot of anxiety. So your brain working too fast in theta, too much in theta can cause anxiety. Your brain working too much in beta can cause anxiety. So anytime the alpha wave is not the predominant wave, we get a lot of anxiety along the way. So this is a typical EEG for a 23-year-old male with autism. His EEG is pretty typical. What you see here is pretty much an absence of alpha waves. These are should be where the alpha wave is, right in here. And he's got a tiny little peak here at about 9 hertz. And this is actually his alpha wave. But it really doesn't stand out against the rest of the EEG. You can barely see it. And this is part of the problem. When we don't have a nice high peaked alpha wave, the brain doesn't go from the brain thoughts don't go from the back of the brain to the front of the brain as they're supposed to. They can kind of get lost along the way because there's not a single firm highway to get those thoughts from back to front. And we need that highway to be able to be functioning at our very best. So this is a different view. Every lead of the EEG that we do from the back of the brain back here to the front of the brain. And this is very typical in little kiddos with autism because we can't use some of the normal leads. So tells us the same information now. What we're looking for is you've got a couple of alpha waves in the back here at the beginning and a couple in the front, but not much of anything in the middle here. And this is, again, a very classic EEG. And at 8 weeks, look, you have beautiful alpha waves all the way from front to back. And that's exactly what we're looking for. And this is the benefits of going through the MERT therapy. So stay with us till the end. Are you wondering what we can tell from your kiddo's EEG, how your kiddo's EEG actually looks? Again, stay with us till the end. You'll learn how to receive that free 15-minute discovery call. You'll be able to make an appointment to talk with us about what we can do. Now, Mr. A was the father of an 8-year-old with severe ADHD and autism. And he was really worried about doing MERT therapy with us because his son couldn't sit still for a second. He was up, he was down, he was up, he was down, he was running around, he was doing something. Couldn't do anything. Now, he was terrified coming in that we would get frustrated with the son. But just like many other kiddos, within a couple of days of being at the clinic, he would come running down the hall, sit himself in that chair, and sit right still. He wanted to get that therapy. He was feeling so much better. And after just 2 weeks, he had improved patience, especially when sharing with his siblings. He had improved mood and more calmness. He had improved one-step instructions. Stop, come here, give me that. And he was more social and creative when playing in the park. This is amazing. Esther will talk about financing here in just a moment and health insurance, because unfortunately for many of us, health insurance doesn't pay. They don't want you to know that there's something out there that can actually get you 100% better, because they're no longer making money on you for all the autism treatments if you're all better and don't need this anymore. So it's very much the insurance industry, the medical model, the pharmaceutical industry has a vested interest in keeping you on their drugs, in keeping you in all their therapies, rather than you getting actually better. So they are not advertising the MERT therapy. They're not advertising to get you all better so that you never need their therapies anymore. They don't want you going that route, because otherwise they're not making money for their shareholders and for their owners at this point in time. We need to look outside of that regular medical box to get the true answers. So Mary and John had a 22-year-old kiddo with autism, and he was really easy to deal with, but he locked himself in this room a lot, and they were having some real issues with him. He was about 6 foot and about 220 pounds, and they couldn't get him to take a shower. They couldn't get him to change clothes, and he really wasn't interacting with the family, and he wasn't sleeping very well. So they went ahead with MERT therapy just to hope to get some improvements, and improvements they did. Within 2 weeks, he was sleeping through the night every night. He was calmer. He was more relaxed. He was more concerned with personal care. He wanted to take a shower. He cared about what clothes he was wearing. And really interestingly, he decided to spend less time in his room and more time out interacting with his family, even though he never learned how to talk along the way. It was amazing, a huge benefit for them to just have these really good treatments. And back then, we didn't know about Spell to Communicate to really suggest that Mary and John do this with their son along the way. So how does MERT work? Well, it's based on TMS, which has been used clinically for over 30 years. Treatment is at one speed, one location. It's approved by insurance for depression and OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and it helps maybe 30% of clients. So not really a good success, and it's actually painful. The therapy is done at a very high level, and it's actually uncomfortable. The MERT therapy, that personalized version, the treatment intensity is individualized, and it's always under a level at which it could be painful. The treatment protocols are personalized in several different brain locations, and the speed is very different, and it is absolutely dependent on your particular brain. And it's being used to help many more medical conditions. Results in our practice show 90% of our clients get some results. So 90% for the MERT therapy of success versus maybe 30% success. It's night and day different. Of course, you want the one that's going to give you better success, especially if you have to spend all this time to do it along the way. So how can kiddos with MERT benefit from the therapy for the autism? The results reported again as soon as 2 to 3 days following the start of therapy. We see improved ability to cope with stress, increased sociability, they're more interactive with others, decreased anxiety, improved connections with others, better sleep, improved response to other therapies, better understanding of and response to commands. We also see an improved mood, less frustration and stimming behaviors, more of a presence and a participating in the world. Instead of the world happening to them, they are now happening to the world. And this is so powerful. And improved emotional stability, an increased attention span, improved language skills, improved ability to adapt to changes, increased motivation for activities and learning. And this is so critical because now they want to interact. They want to learn more. They want to interact with each person around them. So they care to actually learn. And there's an ability to communicate with others more effectively than there were beforehand. Their body is connecting to their brain better, and so they're able to act out their desires a little bit better. And this is what they deserve. They deserve to be able to communicate with us the best that they can to their ability. Can you see how these benefits would change your life, your child's life? It is absolutely life-changing for the entire family to get our kids doing better. Again, just a few more minutes, I'll put up that link for that free discovery call. I'm going to share a little bit more information, and then I'll share that link while I go through some of the research, some of the data that's been done, and showing how much that MERT therapy really helps. And it helps at any age. We can treat kiddos as young as 2.5 years old to I've treated people in their 50s with good success. It is life-changing at any age. The cool thing about treating some of these older kiddos is once they learn Spell to Communicate, they can actually tell you a lot more about what's going on in them. And that's what our older autistic kiddos that we've treated with MERT have been able to say, is that it is so life-changing because it connects their brain to their body better so that they can act on the things they want to act on where they were never able to in the past. Doris, it does absolutely help with ADHD and depression as well. So how can it benefit? Well, all of the therapies for autism help to some degree, but the MERT therapy not only optimizes brain communication and function, but it helps all the other therapies progress faster because the whole brain is working better. So we don't tell anybody to stop any other therapy. We say, hey, continue with it because it's going to make everything else do better. And at some point, you may find you don't need those other therapies anymore, which is absolutely our goal because we know they take up a ton of time, energy, and money to get this therapy for our kiddos to get to their best selves. So the improvements that have been reported in studies, all the list on the left are improvements that we see with MERT therapy over the course of about 5 weeks. But the ones highlighted in yellow were the ones most commonly found. Improved taste, smell, and touch response, improve or lessen fear and nervousness, improve verbal communications. What we've seen it in our clinic most commonly: better sleep, less anxiety, improved interest in relationships, improved interest in other kids, more an awareness of their surroundings, and more of an interest in learning. And these are so critical. And what we found in our practice is, because I put that functional medicine background together with that MERT therapy, I get way better results than anybody else in the country, because I'm the only functional medicine physician doing MERT. And we get way better results than anybody else because we can address the underlying things that may prevent you from not having a great result. And we can address those before you start therapy, so that everybody is more sure that they're going to have the best result possible for their child. So does it help with stimming? Absolutely, Rebecca, for sure. So MERT improved sleep quality. It improved sleep quality, double the benefit of sham therapy, double sleep benefits. So the MERT versus status quo in brain health and wellness, the MERT therapy improved depression 78% on a depression scale versus talk therapy and prescription medication, maybe 31% improvement. For sleep, there's a 68% improvement in symptoms of insomnia with MERT versus prescription medicine, the Ambien or Zolpidem, which are addictive, which improve symptoms maybe 21%. Anxiety symptoms, 67% improvement with MERT therapy versus maybe 32% success with cognitive behavioral therapy. And again, many times addictive drugs. Head injuries, concussions, 57% improvement with MERT therapy versus 22% with TMS, the granddaddy therapy. Again, almost a 3 times better improvement with the MERT therapy. And for PTSD, 49% improvement with MERT therapy versus the TMS, which was maybe 13% improvement. Again, huge difference in benefits for the personalized version versus the impersonalized version. And quite honestly, for the concussions and the PTSD, we see a lot better success rate in our population, because many of these two have some underlying issues that make them not be the best candidate for MERT until we address those underlying issues. And then they're going to get much better successes in the range of the high 60s to 70s, like the other symptoms there. So really, that functional medicine put together with that MERT therapy is the magic where things really change. And that may be why one of the moms earlier had said she'd already done MERT but hadn't seen big changes. There's probably other things going on underneath. So please, I hope, Mom, that you actually call and schedule that discovery call with us so we can talk about what else is going on. So for depression, there was a 27% reduction with TMS therapy in depression symptoms. For MERT therapy, a 70% reduction in depression symptoms. 70% versus 27%. Which would you do? Really? I mean, we want to spend our time with what gets us the best results the first time along the way. Esther, symptoms for dysfunctional gut, that's our functional medicine side of the practice. And we have that functional medicine side and that MERT side. And best is if we use them both together rather than using one without the other. If you're looking at MERT therapy and I see that there's some symptoms going on that will probably impair your ability to get the best results, then we can address those right away before we do the MERT therapy. And that's kind of how we deal them. But every autistic kiddo would benefit from the functional medicine wellness side, because they all have stuff going on that is getting in the way of being their best selves. So autism research in particular, after 5, Hunter, if you wanted to go ahead and put up that link for the making that discovery call, go ahead and hit that link there. Thank you. So autism research in particular, after 5 weeks of MERT therapy in a big study, 82% of clients saw a reduction in their CAR score of over 5 points. That is huge. A big improvement in there. And the Autism Publishing Group says, yes, this looks like it's a good therapy for you. They're not going to be gung-ho about anything that's not put out by the American Medical Association, unfortunately. Long-term studies show it definitely has helped. and 59% of clients reported a further improvement in their CAR score a year after their MERT therapy. So it persists. And those that didn't get that further improvement, they had an underlying issue, a chronic infection of some sort that prevented them from getting the best response. And that's where functional medicine really comes in and I can say, hey, this is what I see going on. We really need to address this so that your results become as awesome and long-term, long-lasting as you would like them to be. The American Association of Neurological Surgeons says, hey, this is safe and actually beneficial as long as 24 months after treatment. And that's really very much what we've seen in our practice. We ask all of our kids to come back in about 6 months for a repeat EEG, if possible, because we want to see that the brain has continued to improve from there. And if for some reason the brain is going backwards, I know I have to address something from the functional medicine side to get those good results. Many of our kids have come back a year and a half later, tremendous improvements, not only in their CAR score and their function, but also tremendous improvements on their EEG. And we haven't even done MERT on them for a year and a half. A mom I've got... So the brain literally likes these new patterns and continues improving on these patterns. Leisha, if your son has PANDAS, absolutely would like to help you with that. If you're not getting good results wherever you're getting. My own kiddo, I have a 13-year-old who's on the spectrum. He's kind of the Asperger's, super high functioning genius kiddo, but has had all these problems. He actually had PANDAS at 9 years old. It was devastating to him, to our family, and I got to see it up close and personal how much that affected him, because he could tell me some of it and we could see some of it. It was devastating, absolutely devastating. Doris, a CAR score is a autism function score that allows you to understand how severe your kiddo is. It's just a number. You probably know a lot more about how your kiddo is functioning or not. So who can MERT help? That MERT therapy offers that personalized, non-invasive, non-pharmaceutical option for so many common complaints. Depression, OCD, migraine with aura, FDA has cleared for that. So that MERT therapy technically could get covered by insurance. Unfortunately, it's still often very difficult to do. With autism, there's a huge multi-center study going on for autism right now. It is in its second year of 2 years that they hope to be doing it. So we're hoping that once the research gets put out and we can prove how well the MERT is doing for autism, that it will then be covered for autism. We're not there yet, unfortunately. We actually got the first 5 autistic kiddos in the country covered for autism, but then the insurance companies started sending back letters. Nope, they're under 18. We won't cover it. They're under 18. We won't cover it. It's great for TBI and PTSD. MERT actually was initially studied first in the military veteran population with PTSD and TBI because the military was losing so many veterans to drug and alcohol abuse and suicide that they knew they needed to do something to get their veterans better, or they wouldn't have any new recruits. And so they found such amazing results for PTSD and TBI in this veteran population that the military will now cover it for PTSD and TBI in its veterans. It helps for anxiety, for depression, for insomnia, for tinnitus, brain fog, cognitive impairment, chemo brain, because everybody with everybody that's had chemo has some brain deficits almost from that. It's great for addiction and substance abuse. Many of the military veterans that you were using drugs and alcohol were able to completely stop their drug of abuse after 2 weeks of therapy with 0 withdrawal symptoms. None, 0 withdrawal symptoms. Now it's the withdrawal that keeps people using because they're so scared of the withdrawal. Imagine not having any of them and not having any anxiety, so you don't even need your drug of abuse anymore. It's great for sports optimization or for brain optimization for any one of us. Who couldn't do better with a better brain after all the stresses we've had in life? So technically, there's very few people who are ineligible for MERT. And in the autism population, we don't have pacemakers, nerve stimulators, defibrillators, or typically intracranial matter. Some kiddos do have shunts or filters. So if you have a shunt or filter, you are incapable of doing MERT if it's still working. If it's not still working, it doesn't matter. The rest of these, most of them now have been covered, shielded, so that they can do MERT therapy, even though technically it used to be an ineligibility for that. We do have special circumstances for those with seizure disorders, bipolar disorder, any kind of titanium metal implants or hearing aids. We just treat a little bit differently for that. So benefits of MERT therapy: it's an innovative technology demonstrating really promising results for many things that we've never been able to put a finger on before, because they're multifaceted. There's all kinds of things going on. It's not one drug that you can give to get things better. It's a non-pharmaceutical, non-invasive, minimal side effects or adverse events, and it's an outpatient setting. So even if you don't have the fabulous results you want, you haven't lost anything. You haven't lost time. You haven't lost the ability to get your kiddo to their best selves. And it's a fraction of the cost of lifetime medical management of all of your kiddos. You guys know how expensive it is and how much the care takes, and how much it takes out of you to be that caregiver for your kiddo with autism. Imagine if your kiddo was doing better and they were able to do more of what the neurotypical kids are and going to school, how much, and not needing all these other therapies, how much would that save you? How much life would it give back to your family? Being able to travel, to go on vacation, to go out to dinner, without your kiddo acting up and you having to leave. Life-changing. And the efficacy, we show how well it works by re-looking at those brain waves and by asking questions every single day. How are you doing today? How has their sleep been overnight? We really need to resolve the issue at its source. The disrupted brain waves result in adverse symptoms and behaviors. Pharmaceuticals, talk therapy, self-medication really are just treating those surface issues. We need to directly change those healthy brain waves so that we can resolve symptoms without side effects or the need for long-term care requirements. That is what real success is, and that is what MERT gives many of our kiddos. And I will say that we did have one kid early on when we first started that she went through, I believe it was 6 weeks of MERT therapy. Mom was 100% sure she was going to get great success, and she didn't change at all. She didn't get any better. I figured out later that she actually had pandas, and we'd never treated the pandas. Mom didn't want to address it. She didn't believe her daughter had that at that point in time. But without ever treating the pandas, she came back 2 years later. She came back 1 year later, the next summer, and did another number of weeks of MERT therapy. Her daughter had amazing changes. So what didn't work the very first time completely changed her life the next time along. Daughter became more quiet. She became less aggressive. She was able to interact with her family and communicate much better. Absolutely life-changing for this family because her mother was convinced that this would work and was willing to try it a second time. I can't even tell you 100% exactly why it didn't work as well as we wanted to the first time. Maybe it was because she had just started with pandas and her brain was so inflamed. I don't know. I still don't know 100%. So sometimes there's exceptions to every rule along the way. So questions that people frequently ask: what's the cost? Well, typically we start with an EEG of the brain and then a 1 hour consultation with me. So that EEG, we schedule a whole hour. Takes about 10 minutes to actually get a good EEG, but we schedule an hour because we know some of your kids don't sit still very well. They may have some problems. It's going to take us a little while. For adults, we're usually in and out of there in 30 minutes by the time we put it on, do the 10 minutes, take it off, and talk a little bit. The initial consult, because you guys have watched this webinar, is $295. That includes the EEG and the 1 hour consult with me. If you're from out of town and you're interested in MERT therapy, we'll skip the EEG at the beginning unless you really have family here that you want to come visit. We'll do the initial consult first, and then if we decide that you're a good fit and you decide to come out here, we'll do the EEG 2 days before you start treatment. We'll have you come in on a Friday, do your EEG, we'll have the results back by Monday, and we can go ahead and get therapy going right away. How long is treatment? The treatment is usually 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And the results are absolutely long lasting if we address the underlying issues that are going on. If there are any side effects, they're what we call an overstim response. So every brain is differently tolerant of energy. And as we give it energy, we're not always really sure who's going to be less tolerant than others. I know from the functional medicine side that some kiddos are going to have some issues. Kiddos with PANDAS, their adrenal system is too taxed dealing with this chronic infection. And we know that they're going to be more likely to have an overstim response. But an overstim response, anxiety, irritability, insomnia. Now, these are exactly what you're coming in to get rid of. So we figured out how to treat so that we very rarely get these symptoms. We treat with MERT way differently than most of the other clinics do because we know you don't want these side effects. Most of the other clinics increase to maximum energy within the first week. That almost always leads to side effects. We gradually increase. If we start seeing side effects, we usually it's the second or third day, because of course everyone can have a bad one day, but if it's 2 or 3 days in a row, we know we're causing the problem. We back off on therapy a little bit. Usually 2 or 3 days later, the symptoms have completely gone away, and then we can go forward a little bit more slowly. If your kiddo won't stay seated, no big deal. We can go ahead with therapy, just allowing them to move around the room a little bit. Now, MERT is typically not covered by insurance. In Arizona, if you are here in Arizona, if you have ESA funding, 100% insurance can be, the MERT therapy can be covered by ESA funding. So if you're in Arizona, if you don't have ESA funding, it's an ESA, Education Scholarship Account. If you don't have ESA funding, please look into it because you definitely want to get this to help fund all the other therapies for MERT. If you are from out of state, see if your state has something similar that you can use to fund other therapies. If not, it is about $2,000 a week for the MERT therapy. As you do more, it gets less expensive. When you do your consult with me, I'll be able to tell you how many weeks we should be looking at in getting your kid to their best self. So please stop and ask. HSA plans or FSA plans with insurance will cover this type of thing. So that's also another option for you if you have any of those. So there are so many options. We also have financing if it's needed so that you can spread out payment for as long as 18 months. So it is doable because you really want to get this as soon as possible. We love kids starting as soon as 2.5 years old because if we can change their brain then, their whole future is going to be different. But it doesn't matter when you start. We've gotten great results on 20 years olds, on 30 years olds, on 50-year-olds in getting brains better. Absolutely at any age is better, but the earlier the better to make those lasting changes. And then typically we suggest with the younger kiddos in particular that every year or two you come back for about a 2-week kind of bump to get a little bit more MERT therapy to keep the brain growing in the right direction. Is it necessarily? No. But does it help? Absolutely. Because the brain is growing so fast, we need to train those new cells, just like the old cells we'd already treated. We're moving better in the right direction. So if you haven't gone ahead to schedule your discovery call with us, that free 15 minutes with us to start your journey, your kiddo's journey toward better health, please do it now. It is first come, first served. Make sure you note to yourself the time and the date of your appointment, because so many times we'll call and we'll get voicemail. That doesn't help us. It certainly doesn't help you get a communication going with us to figure out what we can do to help. If you're trying to make an appointment and you can't find an appointment that will work for you, please use your chat box, let Hunter know, and we'll reach out to you directly, or he'll give you another link there. Do remember that you guys are coming from all over the country, and we are on Arizona Mountain Standard Time, so we may be a different time zone than you, so you need to account for that as you're scheduling. What we're going to discuss in that discovery call is what your primary health concern is, what kind of issues you're dealing with your kiddos. how you've tried to address it in the past, and then if MERT may be beneficial for your kiddo, and then we'll schedule that EEG. Or if you're from out of town, we'll schedule that consult first. We'll have you fill out some paperwork so I understand a little bit more about what's going on with your kiddo. And then we can get you scheduled to come out and visit with us and get that EEG right beforehand so you don't have to come out a second time. This is 90% of our clients will tell us this is hands down the best thing that they have ever done for your kid. Don't deprive yourself, don't deprive your kiddo of this option. It is the best thing out there that we've seen that makes life-saving changes in their lives, in your lives. There's some research articles at mvpmedicalcare.com. If you're looking for a place that might be near you, please reach out to us. On that discovery call, we'll be able to help you. If there's somebody locally in your area, help you with that, or we can talk a little bit about what's going on with your kiddo. If you really want to go somewhere else, or if you really need to be seeing me as that functional medicine doctor to get the best results out of your MERT therapy. So thank you guys. I'm so excited that you're with me here today. I'm so excited that you were attentive and listening to all that we talked about, and hopefully this will change your life like it really has for so many of our clients here. Thank you guys so much. Please, if you've been taught that your kiddo is impaired, that they are not smart, please go start looking at those telepathy takes. I want you to approach your kiddo, even if you're not sure. I want you to approach your kiddo as if they understand everything that's going on with them. And the more that you show them that you expect them to understand everything, I think you're going to see a lot better results in their behavior, in them, than you probably did in the past, because all of a sudden they know that they can trust you, that you're really looking, you're really understanding that they're in there. Telling them, hey, I know you're in there. We're going to try to get you out is so important for these kids to actually know that we get it. We understand how they're being locked into their body. So thanks so much, guys. Hunter will be on for a few more minutes. I'm really looking forward to help each and every one of you get the success that you need with your kiddos to get them to their best selves. Have a great day and a great rest of the week, and talking to you soon. Bye-bye.